Focus, please.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming on board. Thank you for joining us on another Google Plus Hangout for our channel theme. I'm Victor Matthias, and today we're looking at the recent strike embarked upon by the Academic Staff Union of the universities. They're claiming that there are some demands that the federal government didn't meet actually, since they agreed on those demands in 2009 and 2013. But then, this is coming just a few weeks after Malala Yousafzai said or called on the federal government to declare a state of emergency on the Nigerian education sector. So that will basically be our focus today on the hangout. And with me, I have Mac Amaza, who joins us from Abuja, the nation's capital. Mac, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Victor, for inviting me.
Of course. We also have Mohammed Aminu, who joins us from the UK. Mohammed, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Victor.
Of course. And then we have Dr. Diko Awojide, who also joins us from the United Kingdom. Diko, thanks as well for joining us in the program.
Thank you very much, Victor.
Of course. So let me just begin with you, Diko. Where are we? You are a lecturer there. You've seen what the situation is here in Nigeria, and looking at the fact that there was a call some weeks back by Malala on the federal government to declare this state of emergency, and then here we are now. Lecturers are saying we need better teaching conditions and welfare packages. So what do you make of the situation we find ourselves in at the moment?
Yeah, it is very, very unfortunate that ASUU still has to go on strike to get the attention of the federal government in 2017. I think it is embarrassing. I think it is disgraceful. I think it is very unfortunate that academics, lecturers in Nigeria, have to embark on strike year in, year out for their welfare to actually be taken care of. And this is not me totally saying ASUU does not have its own fault, or they are not doing this for their personal gains or whatever. But again, we have to look at the entire education sector. I have said repeatedly that the education sector is in a state of in a very terrible state. The education sector is unfortunately in a state that is not acceptable. I'm trying to be very careful with my words. I don't want to be too critical of the current of what is currently going on in Nigeria. But to be very honest, things are very bad. Things are so bad. And it is quite unfortunate that a lot of people don't actually see, they don't see anything wrong with the mediocre state of the education sector. And it is also unfortunate that we needed a Malala to come and tell us that we need to declare a state of emergency in the education sector. Most of our university graduates are unemployable. Most of our, we have 11 million kids out of school all across the country. This is quite unfortunate. The APC government came in, had a lot of promises. One of the promises was revamping the education sector, refreshing the curriculum, making sure that graduates are employable, taking adequate care of our lecturers and all academics. It is very, very unfortunate that all of this has not been done. And the leadership we have in place in the education sector, it is, there's no vision, there's no plan. The plan that the current Minister of Education came up with after 2 years was rejected by the Federal Executive Council. It is just in a state of mess, and it is very unfortunate, quite sad as well.
All right, I'll come back to you in some of the things that you made mention of. But then, Mohammed, let me get your own stance. Diko is saying that, yes, it is sad that he had to take the strike for the federal government to take notice of the plight of university lecturers. But then, in your own submission, what would you make of it?
Just like Dr. Dipo Awojide said, it is quite unfortunate that every year or every 2 or 3 years you have lecturers going on strike in Nigeria to meet one demand or another from the federal government. But for me, I think I'm not surprised what the Nigerian educational system has become. All you need to do to be able to see the rot in the Nigerian educational system is to get out of Nigeria. So given my experience here in the United Kingdom as a postgraduate student, I think I do not even see Nigerian universities living up to the generalized meaning of the word universities. When you look at student-staff ratio, when you look at the facilities on ground, research facilities or academic facilities, when you look at remuneration of lecturers or academics in the system, you do not see universities in Nigeria. So it is quite unfortunate that we have reached this stage. Our degrees are no longer received with the honor that they used to be. Our lecturers no longer they are no longer able to make good research. They can't publish in good journals. They can't, you can't see their names listed in Scopus and other abstract and citation databases around the world. So there is actually nothing coming out from Nigeria. I think at this stage, Nigerian universities may only pass the test of being able to award undergraduate degrees. But I do not feel like they could even award master's and doctorate degrees. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We cannot continue to keep complaining. We must all come and after hard-nosed deliberations, we must chart a way for the educational system and be able to save the country. Because this is affecting the lives of so many Nigerians. You can see the kind of students that, graduates that we get from our universities these days. So it is quite unfortunate, but I think given this situation that we found ourselves, I think that the strike is the only way that the educational system can be saved.
Well, if you say that is one of the ways that it can be saved, then I think in your own estimation, they are right to have embarked on the strike until their demands are met by the federal government.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, very well. Mark, let me just come to hear from you. I mean, Dipo and Aminu have spoken at length as to what they feel about the strike at the moment. But then let's look at the impact that it will have at the moment on the nation's education system. How impactful will this be?
Elongate the stay of students in school, and
sorry, if you can come again, I didn't get your first statement.
I say like many other strikes, it will elongate the stay of students in school. So when they have people that are meant to be in school for a 4 or 5 year course, you have them doing at the very least. And then also, for many schools, by the time they come back, you have a situation where they rush the students through the rest of the semester. And so it means that even the quality of teaching at that point, it drops because they're trying to meet up with your calendar, to find a way to balance or to normalize your calendar. Well, let me be a bit politically incorrect here. You see, in honesty, I was surprised that this strike took a long time in coming from 2013. I feel like whatever agreement the government reaches with ASUU currently will once again be postponing another strike. And that's because we haven't come to some certain harsh realities in this country. And one of it being the Nigerian government doesn't, I doubt it to ever have, maybe unless in the far future, have the money to fully support what you want to call a top-class university education system. That's one of the biggest problems with such situations. That strike after strike, we do not see ideas, either from government or from the academia, on how can we solve this problem. It's the same story. We need more government funding. And government will, at some point, with the strikes, they are back in the corner. They will sign anything to get back, to get the lecturers back in the classroom. And after a while, the lecturers realize that all the promises made are not forthcoming. They go back to striking. it's a routine. It has become a cycle. We need more ideas to break out of that cycle if you're really serious about ending this once and for all. Until we get there, it's going to be a strike, suspension, and a strike, and back again.
Well, that would be sad if it happens that way. But then, like you said, students will have more time at their hands, either be it, being idle or spending more time in the universities. What should they be doing? Some might just decide, okay, we don't want to read our books. Some might decide, okay, we just want to stay at home. But what would you do if you were in their shoes at the moment? There's a strike and you don't know, it's an indefinite strike. So what would you be doing?
Okay, that for me, I'll advise students to use this opportunity to, to either work, get it in organizations, particularly organizations where are in their field of interest or in their course of aligned to their course of study. This experience can actually go a long way in helping them after school and in their future careers. You also use this time to new trades. There's a tendency for many university or higher education students to look down certain trades, whether it's tailoring, auto mechanics, different. They are numerous. It's a good but then those other skills come in very handy many times. It might not be a career, but it makes us more versatile. There are many courses available, short courses even. Whether I want to learn how to go into coding, learn how to do design, pick up a language learning course. They are numerous, but I believe every person affected by strike should not allow this time to pass by. In my time in university, I lost 2 years to strikes. And one that I'm always thankful for is that I made sure as much as possible that I put them into good use. Because when you say indefinite, you never know. You might think it's going to be 1 month, it could as well be 6 months. And time once spent, you can't recover it.
Well, let's hope the indefiniteness of this one will not last that long. But Aminu, let me just come back to you. You made mention of charting a new way or a way forward. First of all, let's look at the United Nations stipulated or specified amount of money that should be kept or should be channeled into the education system from the GDP or the budget or the national budget or the yearly budget, so to speak. Are we maintaining that figure? Okay, I can't hear you. Hold on. All right, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I do not believe that our universities are receiving the required funding that universities should receive, given the number of students that our universities accommodate every year. So I am not saying entirely that universities should rely on governments for their day-to-day activities. I think that governments should support universities, but our academics themselves should be able to come up with innovative activities in order to sell out whatever they are doing, to acquire funding from the industry or from wherever they could acquire funding, like universities in other parts of the world do. Unfortunately, there has been this debate about university autonomy taking place over several years now in Nigeria. Whenever academics are told to go out there and come up with ideas on how to sustain themselves, you hear universities beginning to establish pure water businesses. So this doesn't make sense to me. I do not feel that universities should sell pure water. How much do you get from pure water to sustain yourself? So what they should think of doing is, how do they get the necessary skill set, the necessary facilities to enable them to come up with novel ideas that will help solve societal problems, and in so doing, they will be able to generate funding that will sustain themselves. So it is unfortunate that the strike is taking place, but then if you weigh the situation, if you weigh the state of Nigerian universities at the moment, and then you weigh the effect of students being left to be at home while this strike lasts. I think you just have to come to a compromise. And this compromise is that this strike should continue, and then until we come up with a workable solution. There is no one single solution that I think that will work for Nigerian universities, because the problems are numerous. When you have so much problems, you do not get out of those problems by, taking just one solution. So I think that there has to be a lot of things that will be ironed out. What are the things that Nigerian universities face? 80% of published journals by Nigerian universities have no visibility in the international knowledge community. I don't think that at this stage in Nigeria, there is any Nigerian academic that is in the league of say, Nobel laureates in the world. I do not believe that at this stage, anybody can win a Nobel Prize in Nigeria like in the days of people like Wole Soyinka. There are universities in Nigeria, particularly state universities in the northern part of the country, that have 1 or 2 professors in the entire university. Our universities are usually bottom heavy. They are described as bottom heavy. What does bottom heavy mean? It means that most academics in those universities do not have maybe postgraduate degrees. So they rely on very few qualified lecturers to teach the teeming number of students. And it's part of the reason why so many universities that I know of, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, rely mostly, over 75% of their staff force rely on visiting academics. So if we start mentioning these problems, you will realize that the problems are too much. And because of this, I think that there has to be a very well-organized, hard-nosed deliberation that will iron out each of these problems. But to start with, the government should be able to support the universities to a considerable extent, and the universities themselves should not rely on government only as a means of survival. So I think that's my take on that.
All right, very well. I'll come back to you again. But then just before we continue, let's welcome from amongst us Usman Ali Alam. Thanks for joining us. Where you're calling from? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Dallas, Texas.
Oh, Dallas, Texas. Thanks for joining us on the program. Oh, sure. We'll come back to you in a minute. But Dikko, let me just come back to you now. You made mention of the education minister charting or drawing a roadmap, which was rejected by the Federal Executive Council, and the same minister again admitted that yes, the federal government failed to fulfill its agreement with the university lecturers. Where do you think the problem actually is coming from? Because if he, as the minister, had charted a course that he wanted the education sector to follow, it was rejected by the Federal Executive Council, like you said. Where is the problem?
Problem is actually, I think the problem is with the entire setup of the education sector. It is quite unfortunate that you see we know what the problems are. I personally have been at this in the last 7 to 8 years. I've actually criticized the government, criticized the university I attended, but nothing has been done about it. Most of our federal and state universities are copy and paste universities. There's no, lecturers don't encourage any sort of critical thinking. Postgraduate students, master's theses are a joke. Almost everything is just substandard, and it is quite unfortunate. If we take an holistic look at the problems and what some of us have actually been suggesting in the last couple of months and last couple of years, you'd actually see that, of course, these challenges look very, very big, but they are not insurmountable. These are challenges that we can actually, these are issues that we can actually resolve. So we need to first of all start from the accountability of these lecturers themselves, accountability of ASUUs, of vice chancellors. Okay, open up your books, the building projects you are doing, the library projects you are doing, how much do you, give out these contracts? Who bids for these contracts? Okay, how much do you pay your staffs? How much, do you use in running generator on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis? So ASUU itself, the universities themselves, the vice chancellors themselves, they have to open up their books. Okay, they have to be accountable. There has to be transparency in the education sector. Now, coming to the government, of course, the government has a lot to do. The government has a lot of policy work to do. A lot of, most of the blame actually falls on the government. Okay, because when I was at uni, I graduated in 2008. My school fees was around, I went to a federal university in Nigeria. My tuition was around 8,400 or 8,500 naira. How much exactly? 8,500 naira by, say, 20,000 students. That is not even enough to pay for the salaries of the academics that actually lecture at that university. Talk more of building infrastructure, talk more of research, talk more of focusing on employability skills. Okay, so if we look at all of this, and I think it must have been 2 or 3 years ago when Fashola tried to increase the tuition at LASU, there was a lot of counter argument and a lot of, oh no, it is not acceptable, blah blah blah. The fact of the matter is, if we are going to reform and revamp the education sector in Nigeria, individuals, students, and families would have to spend more. Families will have to spend more. That's the unfortunate truth. Now, it is in the place of the government to come up with a policy or a framework that allows students have access to loans and grants. This has been done in the UK. This has been done in France. This has been done in Finland, in Canada. Most of the problems of Nigeria, they are not new. Other countries have faced these similar problems and they have resolved it. All we need to do is copy, adjust whatever system, whatever style it is, and paste in Nigeria. It's very simple. So the Minister of Education has come up with some very, very, very funny, education policy and direction, which does not make any sense. And that's why it was rejected. It is not future-proof. It is not innovative. It does not make any sense. It is not visionary. It does not, it is not a policy that caters for the needs of everybody. So I said a couple of days ago, actually, on one of the radio stations in Nigeria, I said, let us even say in the next 5-10 years, our policy, our main agenda is to remove 5 million kids out of the 11 million kids in Nigeria, remove them from the streets and put them in school. Our higher education is in a state of mess. Our basic education is in a state of mess. And I expected that President Buhari and the APC would have appointed someone more visionary, someone more competent than what we currently have in Adamu. Our fees, the fees that students pay at the federal and most state universities, they are nothing. They are not enough. And I know this might not be popular with a lot of people would say, oh no, a lot of Nigerians are from poor families, blah, blah, blah. Give them loans and grants. Are we attracting any grants from the industry? Are we attracting any form of, grant from individuals and past students of some of our federal and state universities? No. And a lot of people who also want to donate will not donate because they know that if they donate, if vice chancellor somewhere is going to steal half of their donation. So you see, these issues, there's actually an interconnectivity between some of these issues, and the solutions as well are actually quite interconnected, and it starts with quality leadership.
All right.
And the question you actually put to one of the respondents, you see, for those who are on strike, what they need to do is start a small business. I'm not going to encourage anyone to go and protest because the police might actually shoot someone dead and they will say, oh, it is Dr. Dipo that said they should go and protest. If you want to protest, protest. If you don't want to, that's your own business. I wouldn't encourage anyone to go and protest. But you don't know how long this strike is going to go on for. Start a small business. Volunteer. Intern if you can. Alternatively, attend personal development workshops. Make sure you're not just sitting at home waiting for ASUU. And it has been said that when two elephants actually fight, the grass will suffer. It is day 3 now, and students are already suffering. This is very, very unfortunate. It is embarrassing. It is depressing. It is sad.
All right, Dr. Deepa, but then I'll come back to you again. However, Manali, let me just get to you. If you can put more room in your location, more light, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, could you repeat that? You said.
All right, if you could put more light where you are.
I don't know that that's actually possible, but.
Okay, that's fine. So let's, looking at the fact the current economic situation, don't you think the demands of the university lecturers are a bit unrealistic? Let me just leave it at unrealistic.
I don't know if it's unrealistic in the sense that they had a memorandum of understanding with the government. And so if somebody's saying we had an understanding and you need to turn it up, right, they have a right to do so as far as both parties legitimately signed on that agreement. Whether that what they agreed on is a different conversation altogether. But I do want to say that if we think about the fact that ASUU is basically saying we had this agreement in 2013 and we're still asking you to enforce that, that to me is problematic. It shows that we have a government that doesn't honor their word. I mean, most of us are not surprised by that anyways. And so to me, I think that when we look at the amount of money they're asking for, that's a little bit high, but let us compare what goes on in countries that have very, very excellent institutions. Education is not cheap. It comes at a price. So once we stop looking at, oh, this amount of money, that blah, 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 and actually focus on what they're asking for, how can you have a professor with a class size of 500 to 1,000 students and has 1 or 2 teaching assistants, even if, how do you expect him to function? He's teaching in an auditorium and you're expecting an old man to shout across the auditorium over 500 students. People at the back of the class, they can't see the board. There's no school tech. There are no libraries. There are no labs. Somebody's studying computer science. You're telling them to read a textbook that was published in 1985. Like, it doesn't make any sense. If I was a professor, I would have a problem with that. So I don't think that what they're asking for in terms of saying, look, we need a better system, educational environment for the students. We need to be paid better. I don't think they're asking for too much, but whether that's feasible is a different conversation altogether.
All right, so if you look at the 2017 budget, I think about 400. The budget itself is about it's over 7 trillion naira, but then only about 448 billion naira was allocated to education.
Right.
So ideally they can't go outside the budget to fund any. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So don't you think the government also has its hands tied?
Well, how did they get there though? Right. So how did they get there? We're forgetting that nobody woke up and just like showed them this document and say, hey, give us money. And the government didn't agree to this. I want to say, like, there is responsibility on the part of the government. If you have, and I think this also speaks to a larger idea of how we engage with contracts or even agreements in Nigeria, is that idea that we can get into things and walk away from it when we haven't set up systems to support, it's like your ego writing the check that your character can't cash. You understand? So I think that we need to, for me, I think that making excuses for the government, I'm not there for that. I'm not there for that. If they read the terms of the agreement and they agreed to it, ASUU has every right to say, look, we're demanding that you hold up your end of the bargain. Now, if the government wants to come back and say, you know what, 4 years ago, we weren't thinking straight. We want to negotiate the terms of this contract. That's a different conversation. But for us to make that excuse and say, well, the education budget is this amount, ASUU is asking for more. When the government signed that memorandum of understanding, though, did they not read what they were agreeing to? That's kind of like my perspective on it. It might be very unpopular, but that's where I'm coming from in terms of that.
All right, very well. Mark, let me just come to you. Looking at still along the money issue, the UN of the United Nations, I think they say 26% of the budget is what we should be, what countries should usually dedicate to the education sector. But then it's not happening here. Do you think that's like, at least for this year and even previous years, it hasn't happened in Nigeria, where we dedicated 26% of our budget to the education sector? Do you think it's one of the reasons why we keep having these strikes and, you know, cutting short of educational or academic years? Sorry.
Realistic.
Can you come
Let
again?
me speak up. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
So it's a huge factor. It's a huge factor. And yes, we do need more government funding for education. Even though realistically, if we allocate 26% of our budget to education alone, not that it's not important, but that's almost entirely our entire capital expenditure. And then it crowds every other thing. And we also have to realize that even in this year's budget, even when you put the budget for education, it includes not just university education, but polytechnics, colleges of education, government secondary schools like the Unity colleges, the funding for UBEC, all of that. We do need government funding, but also at the same time, we have to come to that realization that the optimum funding we need for education, or for higher education especially, cannot entirely come from government. And like Dr. Deepa was saying, do you need to realize that, Monale also said, that education comes at a cost. Now, the question is, what level of cost should we allow to be borne by the students? And this is where we need ideas and creativity. Things like student loans, things like financial aid, stuff like to pay installments, allowing a more collaboration with universities. And yes, schools also need a bit of autonomy so that they're not always being there's no lack of freedom to be able to decide what path they want to take. So it's also has to look at the fact that even if today, for example, we choose to want to admit every student that takes the UTME, the JAM exams, there's only enough place for about 15%. And so which means every year we are leaving behind millions or at least hundreds of thousands of students, because a year average you get about 1.4, 1.5 million people who take JAM, and at least get admission. So and government can open universities for all of them, or high institutions. But then what are the requirements for even opening private schools? They are stifling. If I want to open a private university, you have to have 100 hectares of land and 200 million naira. Even if it's an online university, there's someone who I know is a bit popular on Twitter and has an online university. I've tweeted about his experiences multiple times to open an online university. NUC is still asking for the same requirements of 100 hectares of land and 200 million naira. And this is when countries around the world are looking at other forms, non-traditional forms of higher education, MOOCs, more distance learning, so that it does not have to be the same way to expand options. And we keep talking about how Nigerians are mostly poor and can't afford school. And yes, the generation of Nigerians who will be so, or who cannot just fork out that money out of their pocket right now. But yet every year, about $6 billion at least from the last figures I saw from CBN, leave this country in fees abroad. I'm not saying that all this money can be has to be spent here in Nigeria, but if there's ease of opening schools, a lot of parents will choose to take their children to those schools here in Nigeria, rather to have to seek foreign exchange, which we have all realized in the past few months has been difficult to obtain. So there's need for more government funding, but there's also need for a more creative approach to solving this problem. But if we keep hammering on government funding alone, government will be able to make that optimal funding, and this strikes issue will keep recurring.
All right. Let's take a break from the issue of from the economic aspect of the discussion now. We're about to run up, but Mohammed, let me just come back to you to look at the issue of charting a way forward, or more like a solution to the whole issue. Dr. Deepa talked about the leadership problems, that qualitative leadership is one of the reasons why we are here. Do you agree with him on that? Hold on a bit, please. All right, go ahead.
Okay, in terms of the leadership at the Education Ministry, I think to some extent I agree with him. Personally, in the last 2 years...
sorry, I wanted to say if you can drop your laptop a bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
is it fine?
Yeah, this is fine.
Okay. So in terms of the leadership, I think I agree with Dr. Deepa that, something really is happening at the Education Ministry. In the last 1 or 1.5 years ago, I think I didn't foresee that Adamu sadly would turn out to be a docile minister. Sorry to use that word. So I think we need somebody with more vigor, with more rigor of approaching the educational system. Maybe he could be a better minister somewhere else. But then this is not just a leadership crisis happening in the educational sector. I think that if you want to solve these problems, you have to look at, of course, the leadership, first of all, but then you have to also look at the plight of the students. You have to look at the plight of the lecturers, and you have to address this systemic problem. If there is a system that works, I believe any minister who comes there will be forced to follow suit and make the system work. If not better, he can't make it worse. So the situation in the universities are terrible. You know, I attended a Nigerian university. I am here in this part of the world. Wherever you want to look at it, things don't compare. You know, I remember in those days we bathed in the open in the universities. Laundry rooms and common rooms became places where students use as accommodation facilities. You know, you have hostels that do not look like hostels. You have lecture rooms where you have 1,000 students. We sit on the floor. I could remember at the university in Maiduguri, in our first year 100 level, we were over 1,000 students attending Part 1 sciences. So I do not think that replacing the minister at this stage will solve all of our problems. But let him realize, one way or another, he should be made to realize that the situation is terrible. He has a minister, maybe a junior minister who is a professor, I was told, who was a vice chancellor in a university. So I believe if Adamu is not doing well, what about that other guy who was a professor, a university professor? So somehow they should come together. You have permanent secretaries who could come and rescue the situation. So at this stage, let us hope that the crisis will come to an end sooner rather than later.
I believe that will be the hope of every Nigerian student, and even even parents that, of course, would want to see kids out of school sooner rather than later. But then we are out of time, and we have to wrap the conversation here. Thank you all. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Adeni Ogunfowoki. Yes, I do see you as well. We tried to fix your video earlier on, but then you got on back pretty late. Thanks as well for joining us. I'm not sure where you're calling from, but thank you very much for being with us. Dr. Dikwa Ojide joined us from the UK. Thanks as well for coming. Mohamed Aminu also from the UK. Thanks as well. Mark Amaza joined us from Nigeria's federal capital, Abuja. And Monale Alemika joined us from Dallas in Texas. Thanks as well. That's in the United States of America. But then that's where we'll wrap this conversation, this edition of Channels Beams at Google Plus Hangout. Thanks once again. I am Victor Matthias.